QC, better known and affectionately known as Wally Opal QC, really cannot be adequately introduced in the few minutes that I have to introduce him. A simple reading of his resume alone cannot do him justice. Many years' experience as a talented and respected lawyer, doing both criminal defense and prosecution work in the 1960s and the 1970s. His appointment to the County Court of British Columbia in 1981, appointment to the BC Supreme Court in 1985, appointment to the BC Court of Appeal in 2003, followed by election to the Legislative Assembly of British Columbia in 2005, and appointment as Attorney General of British Columbia serving from 2005 through 2009. To adequately cover his career accomplishments would take much more time than I have today, but in a way that's not necessarily a bad thing. Because while a person's resume can tell us a lot about a person's accomplishments, we know it isn't necessarily the fullest measure of a person. In selecting an honorary fellow for this college, of course, we look for highly accomplished individuals, but we look for something else as well, something more, and that is character. Wally Opal exemplifies the finest qualities of character, qualities to which we should all aspire, qualities which here at Douglas College we try to develop in our students, and honestly, I can say this as an instructor here, qualities which I'm proud to say we regularly see reflected in our students. Qualities like hard work, concern for and commitment to the well-being of others, which we might broadly call simply fairness or justice, and humility, to name a few. Hard work. Mr. Opal is the child of immigrants. He grew up on Vancouver Island in a small resource community. He put himself through university, including law school, working in sawmills. There was no silver spoon in his mouth, no privileged existence or sense of entitlement, just hard work. Concern for and commitment to others. Mr. Opal has spent an almost 50-year career dedicating himself to public service and the betterment of our society, whether as a lawyer representing his many clients, as a judge dispensing justice, or as a legislator and chief legal officer of this province. No one who knows him doubts his commitment to justice and the greater public good. Humility. This is a man who has served in all three branches of government, the legislative branch, the executive branch, the judicial branch, something which is virtually unheard of in this day and age. He has held the highest offices in this province. But how does he expect to be addressed? Is it Mr. Wallace Opal QC, Mr. Opal to you and me? No, apparently he's good with Wally. And I have to confess that when I prepared these remarks, I had to look up what Wally stood for, because I didn't even know his full name. It's a sign of the affection with which people view him and his humility that he goes by Wally Opal. Now, I want to share a short anecdote with you, which I think helps to illustrate this. And I believe it's taken on the status of legend, but it's true, as I understand it. In the 1970s, Wally Opal successfully prosecuted a man for murder in a very high-profile case. These were the days when we still had the death penalty in Canada. And as prosecutor, he successfully sought and obtained the sentence of death for this man in this high-profile case. The man was sentenced to hang, the last such sentence passed in Canada. As it happened, shortly thereafter, Parliament repealed the death penalty and the sentence was commuted to life imprisonment. So he spent the rest of his life in prison. And what happened? Apparently on an annual basis after that, Mr. Opal would receive Christmas cards from this man. Now when I related this story to someone yesterday, they said, well, did it contain death threats or something? And I said, no, apparently they were quite pleasant. And in one of them he said, don't forget that I helped make you famous. That story, for me, begs the question, how does one prosecute a man for murder, successfully have him sentenced to die, and yet still get annual Christmas cards from the man? Well, I guess you ask Wally Opal how that can be done. There is an essential humility about, an essential humanity about Wally Opal. Highly accomplished, yes. Similarly highly esteemed, yes. but without pretense or airs. He's one of us, although considerably more accomplished, but he's one of us. He epitomizes qualities which we admire here at Douglas College and qualities to which we aspire. So it is truly my honor now to invite Mr. Wally Opal, President Kathy Denton, and Board President Tom Spraggs to take their places on center stage for the presentation of this year's Douglas College Honorary Fellow Award.
Well, thanks very much, Graham, for saying all of those nice things. I'm sure my mother must have written that speech. You always worry when somebody says he really needs no introduction, and that's what Graham said. I want to tell you a little story. So when I was the Attorney General of British Columbia, we used to go down to Chinatown during Chinese New Year's celebrations. So we're walking in the parade one day, and people are coming out of the crowd. There are people lined up along the parade route. So people are coming out of the crowd. They want to, shake your hand and have a picture taken with you. So a very nice woman jumped out of the crowd, and she said, "Can I have a picture taken with you?" And I said, "Sure." So I put my arm around her, and her husband's taking the picture, and she said, "Thank you for all that you've done for this province." She said, "I've watched you on the news, I've followed your career, and I just want to thank all of you've done for us, Mr. Assange." When she said that, her husband almost dropped the camera. "That's Wally Opal, that's not Mr. Assange." So I always worry about when someone says he really doesn't need any introduction. President Denton, members of the faculty, honored graduates, parents, it is a great, great honor for me to stand here before you and accept this award. It is a huge honor for me to accept this. I've long been an admirer and a respecter of what's taken place here at Douglas College. I know what you've done in the humanities. I know what you've done in training criminologists and those people who go on to the policing areas and the legal field, social work, and in the humanities. And I just want to congratulate you for what you're doing here, Dr. Denton, and also to the faculty that's integrally involved in the training of so many young people who will no doubt play a significant role in our criminal justice system. Now, Graham was very kind when he said all these things that I said to have done. And it makes it sound like this guy can't hold a job down. I've been very lucky. As Graham and John said, that I am the son of immigrant parents. My father died when I was young. My mother then raised us. And so it was difficult for her to raise myself and my brother. And so she told us one thing, that we had to work hard. The work ethic was something that she instilled in us. And so I'm grateful for all that she did for us. And she is now 100 years old and lives over here at the Queen's Park Care Center. And so I'm grateful for what she has, the gifts that she had that she bestowed upon us. I was lucky to have been at the right place at the right time for many things that happened to me in my career. I was a criminal lawyer, and then I became a judge, and I had the opportunity to help people, and it was a very difficult job because you have people before you who need help, and sometimes it's not always possible to do that, but we all in the justice system do the best we can under difficult circumstances. The position of the Attorney General came quite as an accident. I had no intention of going into political life, but I got a call from the Premier, Gordon Campbell, and he asked me to be the Attorney General for the province. And it gave me an opportunity to do a lot of things that I wasn't able to do as a judge, and particularly in the area of human rights, in the area of crime and public safety, and particularly the area of violence against women. And one particular area, we put on the community court, which is a court for chronic offenders to address their needs. So what we did was, the chronic offenders would be treated, and that's what's happening in the downtown east side of Vancouver now. So we're making some progress. So it gave me an opportunity to do those things, obviously with the help of many, many others. The thing is, we live in a great nation, we really do. And I know that we Canadians complain from time to time about our institutions, our healthcare system, and our criminal justice system, and everything along the way. But the fact is, we are privileged to live in a democracy where all our voices count. And I'm so pleased to see that the mayor is here today to take part in an academic institution that's an integral part of your city. And it's so glad that I'm so happy that you're here participating in these ceremonies that mean so much to the students here, the parents, the families, and to our community. I want to say something about what took place yesterday, and that was the release of the report, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, a report that was written by my good friend Murray Sinclair, a judge of the Manitoba Court of Queen's Bench. I've known Murray for a long time. We've done a lot of lecturing over the years to judges, to members of the justice system, as to how we treat people in a multicultural community, how we ought to treat people of Aboriginal background. We know well that the Aboriginal people haven't been treated historically very well in our country. They make up 3% of the population, but 23% of the population in our jails. Something is seriously wrong in our system when that happens. And Murray Sinclair was absolutely the right person to do this. And as you may have read in the papers in the last 2 days, he has talked about the residential schools and the legacy of residential schools and how historically we have marginalized Aboriginal people, our First Nations people. I can tell you, you don't need any more evidence to explain their marginalization and the fact that they weren't allowed to vote here until 1960. I mean, they were here first, and they weren't allowed to vote until 1960. My own parents, who came here a long, long time ago, weren't allowed to vote here until 1947. Asians did not have that right. Now, there's so many wrongs that have gone on in the past, but as Justice Murray Sinclair said in his report yesterday, that we need to move forward, we need to reconcile, and we need to ensure that all of us recognize the past wrongs that were done. In 2010, I was asked by the Premier of the province to conduct an inquiry into missing and murdered women. It was the aftermath of the Picton investigations. And in that inquiry, we learned of the horrible insults and marginalization that was paid to poor people, to marginalized women, and particularly to Aboriginal people. A woman would go to the police and say, "My daughter's missing," and the response invariably would be, "We don't have time to look for hookers." And that was the type of response that took place. And it was a long time before Robert William Picton, the largest mass murderer in Canadian history, was apprehended in February 2002. And it was that time that the government appointed me so we could hold a public inquiry, so we could hear the voices of those women who were never listened to. And it was a very, very difficult task for me, because to have women come before me and talk about their daughters that they'll never see again, 18, 19-year-old young women who went out on the streets because of the epidemic poverty that they lived in, the systemic poverty the homelessness, the drug addiction, and all of those horrible things that Aboriginal people in this province and in this country have experienced. And so it was a heart-wrenching venture for me for 2.5 years. We had 93 days of public hearings. I still remember one woman coming before us and saying, you know, every time I go into a supermarket, I think she's going to come around the corner. So it was that type of evidence that we heard that left an imprint on me. In a previous lifetime, I had prosecuted maybe 50 or 60 murder cases, and they were difficult cases, but nothing was more difficult than doing this. And but nothing was rewarding at the end of the day, because we gave the women. We went into the Aboriginal communities in the north, went into Kikwanga, we went into Gitnau, Hazelton, and all those communities along Highway 16, the Highway of Tears. And we heard the stories from those people. My purpose in telling you all of this is that we as a nation have a lot to be proud of. And we've done so much. On an annual basis, we get voted as being the best country in the world to live in. But, you know, there's a soft underbelly here that we need to deal with. That was made clear yesterday by Judge Marie Sinclair. And I think we need to pay attention to that. We need to pay attention to what we said in 2012 in our inquiry, and that we have to be compassionate, we have to move forward, and we have to recognize the wrongs that were inflicted in the past. And one of the problems in the inquiry that we did with the missing and murdered women was not only the policing errors that were made, but the public indifference. You know, in the 1990s and up to 2002, there were no less than 57 articles in the local papers about where are these women. The Vancouver Sun would have a weekend edition talking about women who had disappeared, and nobody much cared. And I said often, when I go across the country talking about this, you know, if at least one of those women had come from Shaughnessy or from the University District, we would have cared.
Amen.
But because they were poor, they were drug addicted, they were Aboriginal, they were homeless, nobody cared much for them. So while in our report we lay a lot of blame on the police, the fact is that we were all indifferent as to their plight. And we as a society have the wherewithal to do it. I said a moment ago, we're a very fortunate society. We're a very fortunate nation. We need to move forward and reconcile and keep in mind what Murray Sinclair said in his report and what has been said since that time. And speaking to the graduates, you're entering a world, you don't need me to give you a lot of advice, but I am telling you this. You're moving forward in a very privileged world. And you're very privileged from where you are today. You're going to walk away from here into the arms of your parents because of what you've accomplished. And you deserve congratulations for that. But I urge you to care for those people who are less privileged than you. I urge you to take part in the plight and the weaknesses and all of those issues that we're dealing with on a social basis in our city, in our province, in our country. You're in a unique position, particularly you are graduating in the humanities. And I assume that you're doing that because you are caring people and you care to give yourself and to help our country be made better. So in closing, I want to thank the university for what they're doing. I'm told at the outset that I had 5 to 10 minutes to do this. But I reminded them that when I was in the Supreme Court, nobody ever put time limits on me. I wasn't going to pay much attention. I mean, seriously, I thank you for this honor. It means a lot to me. It's very touching that of all the people that we have in our community, that you would bestow this honor on me. I wear it with great pride. Thank you very much.